Howdy Goons, it's been a month since I got it, and that means it's finally time for the final review of the Pocket Air Mini. If this is your first time watching, hello! I'm the great and powerful Overlord Nimzy. I make videos about nostalgic media and the devices we use to play them, with a focus on keeping it cheap because being an evil overlord doesn't pay as well as it used to be, not until you start getting a bigger following. That's the social media age for you. So, I'm paying for these out of my own pockets, and as you might have noticed, I don't have any pockets. I don't have any pants. So, when I talk about the Pocket Air Mini, it's easy for one to roll their eyes at it. An Android handheld, 4.3, plays GameCube and PS2. It's not OLED, it's only 60 FPS. Womp effing womp. That's poopy, you might say. That's worse than my Retroid Pocket 5 or Mini, or my Odin's. Why would I want something that's worse in every way? Well, it's pretty simple. It's not for you. If you're someone who can afford an expensive device, then you already have your handheld of choice, but until recently, there hasn't been a device under $100 that can play Android games, PS2, and GameCube. For many budget gamers, this is a dream. Until last October, the idea of a sub-$100 handheld that can play PS2 and GameCube was just a dream. A lot of us, myself included, were highly skeptical. I used to make fun of people asking for cheap handhelds that play PS2, like why not ask me for a unicorn? Both equally don't exist as of right now. Well, it turns out that they were only just a little bit ahead of the rest of us. Turns out now is the right time that we should be looking for and asking for these. All they had to do was strip a few features that power users demand, like no OLED, 60 FPS cap, weaker chipset, smaller screen, and an older version of Android. So, is the claim true? Does it play PS2 and GameCube? Yeah, actually. It plays a lot. Not the full library, but still, it's way more than you'd expect. 75% of what I've tested runs at 60 FPS at 1x resolution on the PS2 with Vulkan. Once you get into action games, racing games, and high-speed games, those can struggle a little bit, but that's mostly because those games have always been designed around showing off the absolute limits of the system. So no God of War, no Devil May Cry 3, no Ratchet & Clank, and no to some racers, but everything else runs at its frame rate cap, especially if those games were originally capped at something like 30 FPS like Okami. Keep in mind that I have the 3GB RAM model, and if you get it, I recommend you don't even bother with the 2GB RAM model. GameCube is where things get more touchy. Pretty much everything has to be run with the renderer set to OpenGL. Some smaller games like Luigi's Mansion run perfect, and some barely run at all. The surprising part for me was that the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus couldn't run Wind Waker at its cap, even with Dolphin MMJR, but regular Dolphin on the PAM runs it just fine. So despite a $50 price difference, the PAM may be much closer to the RP4 in terms of performance while being much more comfortable and of a better build quality. GameCube for the most part is where things are more of a coin flip. Nintendo games that push the hardware like Metroid Prime won't be playable, but the many third-party games run much better here. Like Simpsons Road Rage, between the PS2 and the GameCube version is the better running version. I was even able to run multiple 3DS games with no issues, but the 3DS is definitely where you get into the you're pushing your luck buddy kind of territory. These three aren't running perfect, but I think it runs well enough that you could say that you want to buy the PAM just for PS2, and it's not a bad decision. There are some things you can still do to make it run better than my initial tests. I intentionally only used apps found on the Play Store like Aether SX2 and Dolphin, since first-time buyers will likely do the same thing, people who aren't as familiar with the other available emulators. If you use Nether SX2 for PS2, Citra MMJR for 3DS, and Dolphin MMJR for GameCube, then you'll likely get better performance, as those are made to run better on lower power systems. Where the PAM absolutely excels is its mid-range systems. DS, PSP, Dreamcast, Saturn, and N64 are all flawless here and with enough power that you can fast forward. This is what you should really be getting it for. When run on their standalone emulators, we get really good performance, and the screen is large enough to take advantage of these. DS would be better on 2 screens or on a 16:9 device, but it still really works well here. Many third-party games on the DS didn't use both screens to their full ability, so you can still get away with using a button to swap screens or have one of the screens smaller. PSP, despite being smaller and having letterboxing, it's still very close to the original screen size, only being about half an inch less wide. The PSP is a good option for this because a couple of the games that didn't run on other systems had ports, like Puzzle Quest runs fine on the PSP version, but it's a mess and unplayable on PS2. The latency isn't good enough for me to play rhythm games like Rock Band Unplugged, but it's good enough that I haven't picked up my Vita at all. The Vita emulation, of course, is still too spotty to recommend or really talk about. Dreamcast is flawless. Skies of Arcadia is one that I've struggled to run on other lower powered handhelds like the A133P handhelds and the H700 handhelds, but on the PAM it runs perfect, and Sonic Adventure 2 stays fast. Since Dreamcast runs, you can expect N64 to run well too. Everything below it like PS1 and all the Pixel systems run perfect. There is plenty of juice that you can enable some heavy shaders while still playing in eco mode. I've been playing Final Fantasy 1 on GBA with Geom CRT shaders, and it's just so dang pretty. The PAM is somewhat capable of running Android games. I've been playing Vampire Survivors, Dungeon Crawler, Loop Hero, Enter the Gungeon, Halls of Torment, and more with no problems aside from some games struggling with being on a 4:3 screen. The extra RAM from the 3GB version affects what's playable on Android. Genshin Impact works on the 3GB model, but the specs say it requires a 4GB RAM minimum, so don't expect it to work forever. But Android and PS2 are the main reasons I think you should spring for the more RAM model. Since what works well on Android on this device can be a bit touchy, I'd recommend getting the Play Pass to test games out before buying them. Some won't work with controller, some won't adjust to the screen right. Play Pass is $5 and will save you some of that headache. Moonlight works as intended on the PAM. Game Hub, I didn't even bother testing. 3GB of RAM is just too little for PC games on Android. Now that we got the part you care about out of the way, let's talk about some of the other features. If you press the Ayaneo button, you get the Blade menu that lets you set the performance mode. I play sprite-based games on Eco and get around 12 hours of gameplay. Max mode on PS2, I get around 4 to 6 hours. These performance modes enable the internal fan, but the system doesn't often get hot enough on more intense games. If it does get hot, it's along the bottom of the device where the fan doesn't reach. I think you can probably play with the fan off regardless of the setting, but keep it on low for higher settings at least. We have Hall effect sticks and triggers with RGB sticks that I turn off. The buttons and sticks are all on the smaller side and may make it challenging to play certain games. Select and start are a single unit, so don't accidentally press both or you'll close your game. Hidden buttons at the top, thin bumpers but full triggers, and everything is dead silent. The D-pad is especially exceptional. It's silent, glides smoothly, it's almost not even there. Down-firing speakers, a headphone jack, micro SD slot, and micro SDs are turned into internal memory so you have more space for Android apps, a microphone, touch screen, an accelerometer, and it has 2 big exhaust ports. But as I said, the heat builds at the bottom. Maybe there should have been an exhaust down at the bottom. USB-C charging, 18-watt fast charger. Lastly, the system is very ergonomic, and despite being called Pocket, it doesn't fit into pockets the best. You'll need larger than average pockets, or you'll have to remove the sticks, which you can do that if you want. The build quality is absurdly good for the price, and I can see why people like Ayaneo. Now, for the bad. Ordering from the campaign was a very long process, even for a backing campaign, but you don't have to deal with that if you get it right now. Expect at least 3 weeks to a month for it to arrive because of shipping and backed up orders. A third-party retailer would probably get to you faster. The screen has ghosting issues. It was minor for mine, but for others I've seen it be worse. It doesn't bother me because all these old handhelds had ghosting too. Some have gotten light bleed on theirs, and that can really ruin your fun. Some have also arrived non-functioning. Other than that, it's a near-perfect device. Factoring in the condition that mine came in, which was perfect, I'd give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really think that if the device wasn't going to be pocket friendly, then they should have made the buttons and sticks bigger, or they should have made the device and screen smaller to lean more into being pocketable. It's kind of in a limbo, and it's ironic calling it the Pocket when it will really only fit in larger pockets. I'd also like some additional caps to cover the stick wells for when I removed the sticks for pocketing, as well as some larger stick options for when playing shooters. I think that this is the best that the system can be without redesigning it. The included screen protector is also a smudge machine. I'd appreciate an oleophobic screen protector in the future if that's possible, or maybe an option of having them put on a tempered glass protector for me, as long as they can do it without putting any bubbles under the screen. Otherwise, I'll do it myself. I've been enjoying it quite a bit. Despite not being a Game Boy Advance, I've been using it primarily for that and Android games, and it's been a lot of fun. Out of all the handhelds I've played with, this feels the most like I'm playing my old GBA again. I've been bringing it with me everywhere too. Since I need Wi-Fi to play with retro achievements, I use it to farm or play offline Android games. It's a really good handheld, and I'm very satisfied with the purchase. It's my main handheld now. The Ambernicks and Shoe Retro are collecting dust as we speak. I just love it. But if Ayaneo doesn't get better like they promised, then I don't know if I'll spare them when I take over the world. Ayaneo, you make way too good of a product to be so bad at customer support and to be so inconsistent with device quality. This has been my final review, unless it explodes or something. Thanks for watching, and special thanks to the members, my stinkers that support me, and what I make, like Dragon Fanatic, Astropixie YT, Linky, and Willy Pete. I'll see you all later. I got this new handheld to play powerful games, but I'm still going to play pretty much just GBA on it. Bye!